What if the quietest UK corners hide the darkest secrets waiting to be uncovered? Step inside 10 haunted graveyards and cemeteries where restless spirits linger and stories refuse to stay buried. 1. Chingford Mount Cemetery. Nestled in the northeastern reaches of London, Chingford, Mount Cemetery doesn't look like a place of dread at first glance. Its well-kept rows of Victorian graves and neatly trimmed paths whisper stories of a more genteel past. But beneath that surface lies a darker presence that many locals have grown wary of. Established in 1884, the cemetery is the final resting place of many notable figures, including several infamous East End gangsters such as the Kray twins' relatives. But notoriety doesn't always stay buried. In the fading light of day, shadowy figures are often reported wandering the older section of the grounds. They drift between tombstones, disappearing just as quickly as they appear, leaving behind only the echo of phantom footsteps on gravel. One of the cemetery's most unsettling legends involves a silent woman in black, often seen standing completely motionless near a weathered grave in the western section. Witnesses describe her attire as Victorian, a long black dress and a heavy lace veil that covers her face. But what chills most is her stillness. She doesn't weep or wail. She just watches. Those who've dared to approach say they suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of unease, as if being judged by something ancient and cold. One visitor claimed that as he looked closer, the veil seemed to fade slightly, and beneath it, a pale, expressionless face with wide, colorless eyes stared back at him. A photographer once attempted to capture her image, but every photo taken in that spot came out completely black, as if the lens had been covered. Local paranormal investigators have documented strange cold spots, electronic equipment failure, and disembodied whispers in the early hours of the morning. One even claims to have caught a figure on infrared, standing motionless at the edge of the path long after the cemetery had closed. Is it the lingering sorrow of broken hearts, or the restless souls of those who lived violent lives? Whatever the truth may be, visitors agree on one thing. Chingford Mount isn't a place you want to find yourself alone in after dark. 2. Covehithe Churchyard High, upon the Suffolk coast, lies a place where time and tide conspire to erase the past, but not before leaving behind something deeply unsettling. The village of Covehithe, largely abandoned and now little more than a scattering of cottages, plays host to one of Britain's most eerily beautiful ruins, the shell of St. Andrew's Church, its graveyard nestled within. As coastal erosion continues to devour the surrounding land, the churchyard itself teeters ever closer to oblivion. Headstones lean at impossible angles, some swallowed by undergrowth, others cracked by the creeping sea air. But it's not the crumbling stones or lost graves that haunt this place. It's the sounds and the silence. Locals speak of ethereal chanting echoing among the ruins late at night, long after the last bird has gone quiet. Some say the voices sing in Latin, others in a tongue they cannot place. There have been reports of figures moving in the moonlight, spectral monks, hooded and featureless, gliding silently between the tombs. One former resident, now elderly, recalls riding his bicycle past the churchyard as a boy. "I'd always pedal faster there," he said. "There was a coldness, not wind, something else, like the dead had eyes." Adding to the eerie reputation is the tale of the singing grave, a weathered headstone that supposedly hums when the wind passes through a crack in its face. But witnesses insist the sound is too regular, too melodic. One visitor claimed the tune followed him all the way back to his car, growing louder until he drove away. Others say the grave itself has moved slightly over time, not due to erosion, but as though it has shifted in its sleep. It's a strange place where the land may vanish, but the echoes never truly fade. 3. Southampton Old Cemetery. On the edge of Southampton Common lies a forgotten world, Southampton Old Cemetery. Opened in 1841 and largely neglected today, its wild beauty hides a darker presence that has drawn both curiosity and fear for decades. With over 116,000 burials, many of them from tragic shipwrecks and wartime casualties, it is said that the ground here remembers every soul. The cemetery's tangled undergrowth and ivy-cloaked statues give it a gothic beauty, but also a sense that one is never truly alone. Visitors have reported being followed by the sound of footsteps crunching leaves just behind them, though no one is there. Others have seen fleeting glimpses of a woman in Victorian mourning garb walking towards the old chapel, only to vanish as she reaches the door. The most famous spirit said to haunt the cemetery is the Weeping Lady, thought to be the ghost of a woman who lost both her husband and infant in a shipwreck. Her grave, marked only by a small stone near the chapel, is said to cry on misty nights. Multiple witnesses claim to have seen moisture forming on the headstone, even in dry weather, followed by the soft, unmistakable sound of someone sobbing. One night in 2003, a group of amateur ghost hunters ventured into the cemetery after hours. What started as harmless fun turned chilling when one of them captured what appeared to be a translucent figure crossing the path behind them on camera. The figure matched the description of a naval officer in full uniform, a common sighting near the World War II graves. The footage was shaky, but their fear was not. What's most disturbing is that those who encounter the Weeping Lady often report an overwhelming sense of grief for days afterward, as if her sorrow is something contagious, passed from soul to soul, long after her story was forgotten. 4. St. Kenelm's Churchyard hidden. Deep within the Cotswold Hills lies the quiet village of Sapperton, an unassuming place with centuries of history and a churchyard that whispers one name louder than any other: Kenelm. St. Kenelm's Church is named after a boy king from the 9th century, a child saint who was said to be murdered by a jealous relative and buried in secret. Ever since, stories of strange lights, chilling breezes, and ghostly sightings have haunted the place, said to guard his memory. The church itself is old, beautiful, and atmospheric, the kind of place where time lingers in the shadows. But it's the surrounding churchyard, bordered by thick woodland and ancient yew trees, that seems to stir the dead. Many visitors speak of a sudden stillness when they enter the grounds, as though the very air becomes heavy with unspoken secrets. Birds go silent, leaves stop rustling, even the wind seems to hesitate. One recurring tale involves pale blue lights that flicker and drift among the graves after dusk, orbs of energy that dance between the trees and vanish when approached. Paranormal researchers suggest they could be spirit manifestations. Locals, however, have long believed that they're Kenelm's guardians, restless souls drawn to the site of the boy's supposed burial. In 1992, a hiker who'd taken a shortcut through the churchyard late at night claimed to hear a child singing softly in Latin. A lullaby, he said, though he didn't know the language. The sound stopped abruptly when he passed a crumbling tomb inscribed only with a cross. When he turned to look back, a small, hooded figure stood by the grave and then disappeared into the trees. Whether it's the memory of a royal tragedy or the deep roots of the land itself, there's something at St. Kenelm's that resists rest, a place where innocence and grief seem forever entwined. 5. Oxbridge Cemetery. In the heart of Teesside, beyond the noise of modern life, lies Oxbridge Cemetery, a place that has gained quiet notoriety among locals for being far more active than its stillness suggests. Opened in the 1870s, it's home to thousands of souls, but only a few of them are known for making their presence felt long after burial. Visitors speak of an unease that creeps in the moment you pass through the old gates. The cemetery is divided into older and newer sections, but it's the western side, the part with cracked headstones and worn-down angels, where most of the strange occurrences are reported. Strange, low growling has been heard at night, with no visible source. Others claim to hear their name whispered, faint and urgent, even when they're alone. One man who jogged through the grounds during lockdown reported hearing the sound of a woman crying behind a hedge. When he stopped and looked, there was no one there, just a windless quiet. He didn't finish his run. More disturbing is the tale of an unmarked grave that some locals call the cursed patch. Grass refuses to grow there, and animals seem to avoid it. In 2008, a woman who touched the soil for a photography project allegedly fell ill for weeks with no medical explanation. When she returned to finish her work, her camera failed. Every image from that grave corrupted. Some say the patch lies directly above an ancient well that was filled and forgotten, a place where something was buried that should never have been disturbed. Whether it's truth or myth, even the groundskeepers avoid mowing that part. In the dead of night, a faint glow has sometimes been seen hovering just above the cursed patch, flickering like candlelight, but with no source. Locals warn that those who linger too long might feel a cold hand brush past their shoulder, urging them to leave before it's too late. 6. Brookfield Cemetery. Brookfield Cemetery in Birmingham is not widely known, and perhaps that's for the best. Tucked away behind residential streets and old industrial lots, this resting place carries a heavy sense of forgotten history. But according to some, it has not been entirely forgotten. Something, or someone, still lingers there. In the 1800s, Brookfields was rumored to be a site for body snatching, with graves dug up under cover of night to fuel the illegal trade in cadavers for medical research. Though no official charges were ever brought, whispers of these crimes continue to this day, and some believe the disturbed dead have never forgiven the desecration. Today, the cemetery is semi-overgrown. Moss-covered stones lean at odd angles. Faded names barely cling to crumbling slabs. But it's not the age that unnerves visitors. It's the feeling of being watched. One local historian who regularly photographs graveyards said Brookfields was the only one that made him feel actively unwelcome. There have been reports of strange reflections in tombstone surfaces, reflections that don't match what's in front of them. One paranormal group described a chilling experience where a member saw their own face in a polished stone blink, even though they were completely still. The footage was lost due to a corrupted SD card, a strangely common occurrence for electronics used on the grounds. Some who visit claim they feel disoriented, as though the paths subtly change, leading them in circles, deeper into the cemetery than they intended. When they find their way out, minutes or hours seem to have slipped away, and sometimes, as the sun sets and shadows stretch across the graves, people report hearing faint rustling, not from wind or animals, but as though something beneath the ground is stirring, not trying to escape, just listening. 7. Rosary Cemetery. Tucked away in the historic city of Norwich, Rosary Cemetery isn't just notable for being England's first non-denominational burial ground, It's also one of the most quietly unsettling. Opened in 1821 as a radical idea where people of all faiths and none could be buried side by side, the cemetery now plays host to over 18,000 souls, and if local legend is to be believed, a few who haven't fully passed on. The winding paths, dense foliage, and aging tombstones create a moody, almost romantic setting. But beneath the ivy-covered charm lies a strange energy. Visitors often speak of sudden cold spots that appear even in the height of summer, of whispers that carry no source, and of a distinct feeling that one is being watched. One of the cemetery's most enduring legends is that of the Cloaked Sentinel, a shadowy figure said to guard a particular area of the graveyard known for unusually tall, blackened headstones. Described as wearing a long cloak and wide-brimmed hat, the figure has been spotted by several witnesses, always standing perfectly still until someone attempts to approach, at which point it vanishes. In 2011, a photographer conducting a shoot for a local Gothic art project captured an unexplained anomaly: a faint, luminous figure standing beside an angel statue. The figure was tall, slightly bowed, and appeared to be holding a staff or cane. Though attempts were made to recreate the image with lighting tricks, none matched the eerie clarity of the original. And then there's the silence. Not just the quiet of nature, but an oppressive stillness that falls suddenly, as if the world around you holds its breath. Many say it happens just before the sentinel appears, and when it does, people don't just see it. They feel something reach into their memory, a sudden wave of sorrow or joy that doesn't belong to them, as if the sentinel isn't guarding graves, but the feelings left behind. 8. Cannock Chase, German Military Cemetery. On a secluded patch of land deep within Cannock Chase Forest lies one of the most serene and unsettling cemeteries in the UK. The German Military Cemetery, where over 5,000 soldiers from both world wars are buried, is a place of solemn beauty, with its symmetrical layout and pristine white crosses. But beneath the silence lies something else, something the trees seem to remember. Surrounded by dense woodland, the cemetery is unnervingly still. No birdsong, no distant hum of traffic, just wind rustling the pines and the quiet crunch of gravel beneath your feet. Visitors often speak of feeling observed, not in a malevolent way, but with intensity, as though unseen eyes follow every movement. There have been repeated reports of phantom soldiers standing silently among the graves, most often in the misty early hours. One story comes from a park ranger in 2004 who claimed to see a group of men in old uniforms gathered near the far wall. Thinking a reenactment group had snuck in, he approached, only to find the space completely empty. More chilling is the account of the laughing child. Several walkers in the woods nearby have reported hearing a child's laughter, high and playful, echoing through the trees, even though no children are allowed in the cemetery grounds. Some say the sound is accompanied by the smell of pipe smoke, as if an old soldier watches over his young visitor, or vice versa. And if you listen closely, some say you'll hear the sound of boots, heavy, marching in perfect rhythm, though the gravel remains undisturbed. The war may be over, but some soldiers have not stood down. The crosses never seem to age, and many believe that's because the men beneath them are still waiting, not for peace, but for orders. And until they come, their watch continues, under forest, fog, and forgotten oath. 9. Newark Cemetery. Newark Cemetery sits just beyond the bustle of the historic market town. A quiet, tree-lined expanse filled with well-tended war graves, civilian memorials, and silent sorrow. Used since 1856, the cemetery holds the remains of thousands, including Commonwealth airmen from World War II, many of whom died training in the nearby RAF airfields. But war isn't the only thing that left a mark here. What sets Newark Cemetery apart is its strange relationship with weather and sound. Locals speak of graves that weep in dry weather, small trickles of moisture that appear on certain headstones without rain or mist. No scientific explanation has held, and those who touch the moisture often report a tingling or sharp cold sensation in their fingers. The chapel at the heart of the cemetery, once a hub for Victorian funeral rites, is now unused and said to be haunted by the ghost of a gravedigger who died on site in the early 1900s. Security patrols have reported lights flickering within, even though there's no power supply. One patrolman claimed to hear the steady thud of shoveling, as if someone were digging, very slowly. Perhaps the most disturbing tale is that of a man who visited his uncle's grave every year without fail. One year, arriving at dusk, he found the grave disturbed, earth uneven, flowers scattered. When he bent down to fix it, he heard a whisper directly behind him. "He's not here." He turned. No one. He never returned. Newark Cemetery remains a place of honor and memory. But when dusk falls, even the sturdiest stones seem to lean a little closer, listening, waiting. Some say that on certain foggy nights, the cemetery's silence is broken by faint voices, prayers and songs long forgotten, drifting between the trees. It's as if the past itself refuses to rest in peace. 10. The Mount Cemetery, overlooking the town of Guildford. The Mount Cemetery sits high on a quiet hillside, its terraced rows of Victorian graves gazing down over the valley below. By day, it offers peace and panoramic views, but by night, it becomes something else entirely. There's a fog that rolls in across the mount with startling speed, even when the weather elsewhere is clear. Locals say it moves unnaturally, hugging only the cemetery, coiling between gravestones like smoke. Within this mist walks a figure known only as the Grey Walker. Described as tall, gaunt, and wearing outdated clothing, a long grey coat and brimmed hat. The Grey Walker is said to move without sound. Witnesses claim he appears when the fog is thickest, always following the same path from the eastern gate to the upper terrace. No one has ever seen his face. No one who's tried to follow him has made it to the top. In 2017, a university student doing a local folklore project visited the mount just before sunrise. She filmed a short documentary clip, and later, while editing, noticed something chilling: a blurred figure moving behind her in the opposite direction of her steps. She never went back. Another strange phenomenon is the echoing call, a voice that seems to say a single name, softly, over and over. Different people have reported different names, always ones they recognize from their own lives. The Mount Cemetery is beautiful, yes, historic certainly, but sometimes beauty can be a mask, and not everything that walks those terraced paths walks alone. Have you experienced anything creepy? Share below, subscribe for more, and don't forget to share with friends who love ghost stories.